TV umpire to director, we have a player review. Can we rock and roll, please?
Hello and welcome to Bits and Pieces. This is the friendliest cricket podcast where everything is made up and the points don't matter. The points don't matter and the host can do whatever they want, like India in the ICC Super League for qualification to the 2023 World Cup. And much like India under Dravid, we don't have one captain, we have many wall-rounders as it were. And we pick a captain of the day based on vibes. This is episode 25 and I'm your host for the day, Tony. And joining me are our friends for the day. First up, he spent time in England learning how to make poor jokes and was appropriately nicknamed Kent Bolt, from where he went to Australia to craft a Melbourne identity, and continued putting mockets at Brisbane, where for his blade jokes he is known as the Gabba Stabber. While our coping mechanisms are channeled in amateur vices, he is the only one who is a pro vice channeler. Chancellor? Whatever. The founding father of Bits and Pieces, who constantly asks us who are our shareholders and how are we making the experience better for them. To which we say, "Dey, shut up and watch the IPL, da." Say hi, Mohan.
Oh my God. Oh my God. What do I even say? Tony, I mean, you just
say hi. I told you that.
Yeah, I will say hi, but I think you just need to specialize on Bits and Pieces intros and that itself will be the podcast. Thank you.
I think this is retribution for your rant from last week, Mohan.
Yeah, I get that.
The Mohanologue.
Don't out our strategy. That's exactly what we do. We do intros and then the rest of it is just whatever. By the way, sly dig, Mohan. Last week we said Manjrekar is the father of the podcast. You have now been anointed the founding father of the podcast.
Manjrekar is my bastard child.
Okay, up next, you've only witnessed his brilliance on the pod, but behind the scenes, he never shies away from the heavy lifting on edits and more. The greatest all-rounder this pod has produced. You would think that this is a fun hobby for him, a way to de-stress from his work, a glance loosener. But he's truly the Lance Klusner of this pod. Always at the ready to sprint off like Freddie Flintoff. The man who always has a good time and gets this pod out of hit and miss jail. The Chris Gale of Bits and Pieces. Say hi, Nitin Sundar.
Hi, Tony. Thank you. You're just, every intro is better than the previous one, if that could be possible.
You're editing today also.
Okay, yeah, all right, done.
The new man on the pod and a very special guest. Sherlock Holmes had an elder brother whose abilities in deduction exceeded his own. Mycroft Holmes. Nitin Sundar has a Microsoft Pro. His brother, Mithun Sundar, who casually treats professional cricketers like they were part of his own Diogenes club. If you were to ask which of the brothers would be the first to resort to Sundaram bowling, wait, that's Sundaram bowling, not Sundaram bowling. Gah! This intro doesn't work. But thankfully, Murli Sadgopan has sent in a better intro for Mithun. Let's go. And I quote, "If you thought Nitin was sitting and splitting Excel sheets of batting averages to determine medians, here's a beautiful podcast saying, Kitna Sundar hai hum? The answer to which is 2. Thanks to our second Sundar today, Mithun, the marketing maverick with barely just so much interest in cricket that can only be defined as bits and pieces. Say hi, Mithun Sundar.
Hi, Tony. My better intro is brother of Nitin. We'll just leave it at that only.
Yeah. And finally, rounding up the panel, I couldn't have introduced him before Nitin and Mithun Sundar because that would be putting the cart before the bros. His Insta feed of trades and railways should be called a track record, but he's got an even better track record on Bits and Pieces as the one man who can balance sense and nonsense perfectly. From Seattle, weighing in at 10,734 insightful tweets. Say hi, Kurt.
Hi. Thank you, Tony. Thank you.
All right, folks, that was the episode for this 2020.
Yeah, thanks all for attending.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So before we start, I was saving this up for after the intros. I feel like we should call today's intro Bhai, yahan for obvious reasons.
Oh! Mithun has no idea what that means.
Mithun has no idea.
So apart from cricket, the other problem is that I don't understand Hindi very well. So
Exactly.
both are a significant issue. But listen, I already put this on the group. For me, achievement unlocked. With today, I'm retiring from everything. If I've gotten out of Bits and Pieces, game closed with that. So thanks for having me on.
One of the reasons why we have Mithun on the pod is because he's got real-time experience in Goa where, celebs hang out. And may not have anything to do with cricket, but it's a fun story anyway. So why not? We thought we'll start with this one.
No, sure, happy to. So, but the story goes back a little distance, and it actually goes back to when we were kids. My first reason to be on this pod, and I told Niti that I'll have to tell the group this, is that I actually is the person who introduced Niti to cricket. I don't know if all of you know that, but it was because of me that he got started on cricket and on writing.
You're saying it's your fault.
Yeah, I know. You're on the podcast to apologize to our 20 listeners.
To the world.
Because I got him reading the newspaper, and that's where he started both. And that's actually how this is. He will say no, but that is actually where it all started from. You should ask that. I apologize to all of the viewers who've been subjected to both his sense of humor and the cricket knowledge that he's gathered over the years because of this thing. So sorry about that. But on the Goa story, Tony, that you asked for. See, I was spending like about a month and a half across the West Coast and in Goa. And at that point, my wife and child had joined me as well. So we were going out for a dinner one night and we wanted to go to a nice place. And it was the last night that they were there. They were leaving after that. And then I was going to come back much later. And we picked this restaurant, which is an old-time restaurant. Everyone knows about it. It's called Bumrah's, which is in North Goa. And felt we'll go there and have a good meal. We had gathered a whole group of folks. Bumrah's. B-O-M-R-A-S. Well, actually, I was corrected. The way to pronounce it is Bumrah. Because that guy who runs the restaurant, his name is Bumrah. But it is spelled as B-O-M-R-A-S. So everyone calls it Bumrah's. So depending on what you want to call it. He's actually called Bumrah the Jap. That's what his nickname is in the Goa community. Anyway, so we had like a reasonably large group. We had gone there for dinner. We were having like a nice dinner. Now, the story backs a little bit before because I had met Bumrah in a different restaurant, which is a sort of a hole-in-the-wall restaurant called Ramesh. And Ramesh is run by Ramesh. And it's not Rami. It is Ramesh only. Ramesh is run by Ramesh. He makes fairly interesting regular food. And on the day when we were walking up to that Ramesh restaurant, I had to stop because my daughter needed like something done on her chappal or something. So my wife walked ahead to order. Wife's name is Divya. Divya went in, saw three people sitting at the restaurant and asked the first person who looked sort of at her saying, "Are you Ramesh?" That guy said, "Yes, I am Ramesh." And they had a long conversation. She even placed the order with that guy. That guy was, by the way, having a couple of drinks and eating a long meal. I came in. I had already met Ramesh before. And I was like, "Have you placed the order?" She's like, "Yeah, I did." With him. I was like, "But he's not Ramesh." That guy was Bumrah, sitting at Ramesh's restaurant eating, but coincidentally. So there was already a mistaken identity story in the past. And then that evening, and then we got along really well. We chatted. He, by the way, during his conversation, before he told us he was Bumrah, he dissed the food at Bumrah. So he's obviously got a sense of humor as well. So when we went for that dinner, like a couple of days later, we went and 6-7 of us went, sat, had a long 3-hour meal. Before we left, I wanted to go thank this Bumrah, the said character Bumrah. So I went there to thank him, and he was standing by a table. It had about 2 guys and 3 women. And I was wearing what in Malayalam we call veshti, but maybe for some of your listeners it's a dhoti. But I was wearing a veshti because it was towards the end of my trip, and I only had 2.5 things which were still looking like they could be worn. And a veshti sort of is versatile. So I was wearing a veshti and walking around and having my dinner. And when I stopped to thank Bumrah, one of the chaps at the table looked at me and said, "Naad evadaya," which is the standard Malayali greeting, which is, where is your country from, or where do you originate from? Naat evadaya or naad evadaya, which is just our own parochial bonding, which happens every time 2 Mallus meet, right? Because you have to find some commonality between us. I was like, and there is a funnier story in this. That's why I said this will have many branches. Actually, in our family, we don't really know where we are from because we are from Madras. That's where we were born and raised. So when someone says where in
so like
Kerala
most of Bangalore, basically.
So when someone asks where in Kerala are you from, we don't have an answer. For some reason, I picked this town called Erapulli that I normally throw out each time, which is actually not where my family is from. But so that's an inside joke within me, Niti, and the cousins, etc. So I anyway said Erapulli and went deep into it. He asked me which part of Erapulli. I said near the State Bank of India, etc., which is completely made up. But we had this conversation. But I'm looking at that fellow's face, and he's a good-looking guy. He's got a beard. And I was like, I know this guy from somewhere. So I tell him that, obviously. And by then I was 2 or 3 drinks down. I was feeling extremely confident. I slapped Bumrah on the back. And I look at this guy and I'm like, well, I said, we've met before, haven't we? And that guy is like, no, I'm not sure. And I'm like, no, my name is Mithun. Are you sure you don't? And he's not giving me his name either. And they're all being a little cagey around it. The guy next to him is not talking very much. The women next to who are sitting at the table are sort of tittering. Anyway, I give up. We say bye. I walk outside. As I walk out, I tell Divya that I met this table. He didn't tell me what his name. And she was like, he's a very famous cricketer. She didn't give me the name. Divya's my wife. She didn't give me the name. I was like, famous cricketer. That time it strikes me, this must be Jadeja. That was what it suddenly bulbs in my head, saying this is Jadeja, and Jadeja is a famous cricketer in our family because Niti was a major fan of Jadeja as he grew up. He was one of the cricketers whom he used to follow quite seriously and severely at that time. So I walked back into the restaurant and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize who you were. And if I don't come back and say hi and get know your name and sort of say thank you, my brother will be really irritated." And he's like, "Who's your brother?" And I'm like, "This is Nitin, who's, he used to write for Cricinfo, and he's a..." So they all recognize the name, but they don't let on that they've recognized the name at that point. So we have this back and forth for a little bit. Anyway, so I thank them, feel sorry about, stomping into their lunch and dinner, have a long conversation with them, and then leave the place. In Goa, spent a while getting to know Jadeja, but not actually, and him actually pulling my leg for a while as well on the side.
What an amazing story. And who was with Jadeja? Did you figure it out later?
So it was this guy who looked familiar for a while. I realized that it was this other cricketer, which took me a while again to settle in. I came back and asked Niti this thing, are Ashish Nehra and Ajay Jadeja friends? And he's like, yeah, I think they're holidaying together in Goa, which is when it struck me saying this should be Ashish Nehra. For some reason, it wasn't something which had struck. Jadeja's face had struck because Niti was a fan. I think one of my sisters had a mild crush on him as well. So for that reason, his face had struck. But Ashish Nehra, for some reason, neither did anyone in the family have a crush on. I don't know if Niti was a fan. He just wasn't vocal about it.
Just to clarify for everyone's benefit, it's Ajay Jadeja and not Ravindra Jadeja. And at this point, Mithun's wondering, there is another Jadeja? What are you guys talking about? He introduced me to cricket and then, promptly stopped following cricket himself. So he has no idea. By the way, he didn't get the Bumrah's joke either. He doesn't know why you stopped him.
Exactly.
So Jasprit Bumrah, Mithun, is a popular cricketer these days. As was Sadagopan Ramesh, by the way. So
the next test captain for India in a few days.
Could be.
Who, Sadagopan Ramesh or Jasprit Bumrah?
If it was Ravindra Jadeja, it would be apt because in the podcast is named after him. So
No, I was going to say that the way you can tell the two Jadejas apart is one Jadeja used to finish the innings with Indian captains. The other Jadeja's innings has been finished by a former Indian captain. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
And basically the reason Jadeja asked you is because he's a Malayali, of course, I'm guessing.
See, this also
Half
I figured out later because Jadeja is not really a very common Malayali name. He's half Malayali, is it?
He's a half
His
Malayali.
mother is from
his
Alappuzha.
mom is Malayali, I think, yeah.
Also, Mithun confounded everyone by saying we call it Veshti in Malayalam. We call it Mundu in Malayalam. We call it Veshti in Tamil. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about the confused Elapulli, Palakkad, Madras triangle in which we grew up.
I am not sure this is accurate. This is one of your made up facts like that. I think Veshti works in Malayalam also.
Tony will fact check this on the
It's
spot.
obviously
check
Munda
this.
in Malayalam. It's okay.
Hey, but one other fundamental doubt is Erapalli is in Kerala? I thought Erapalli is in Karnataka
Now
with
you're reading
E.A.S.
a different one.
Prasanna.
No, you were saying Erapalli. Erapalli is different from Elapulli.
Elapulli, okay. But whereas Prasanna is Erapalli Anandrao Srinivas, what? E.A.S. Prasanna, right?
Yes.
And Edappalli is where Lulu Mall is. I don't know, just for the Malu listeners.
But there's a Lulu Mall in almost every town in Kerala, I would have thought.
No, there's only one, which is huge. No, there's a second one coming up in Trivandrum.
The entire spectrum of retail lies between Lulu Mall and Lululemon.
Speaking of things that are tangentially related to cricket, apparently in the West Indies there is a new competition that is going to come in called the 60 just before the CPL 2022. And what is this about? Nitin, you want to tell us what the 60 is about, and then Hank reacts to it.
Firstly, it's not the 60, right? It is spelt 6, the number 6, followed by IXTY. So it is the 6XT. 6XT, right?
660.
That's a
660.
Yeah. So a new look T20 tournament. So this is the ESPN Cricinfo tweet announcing this tournament. A new look T10 tournament is set to be played just before CPL 22, the 6XT. What do you make of these new rules? And they put up a banner with all the new rules of the 660. right? On the left side of the banner, you have Chris Gale, obviously, because it's a new form of limited overs cricket. I think that it's just to cue you that there are really no rules. I mean, if Chris Gale is your mascot, then there are no rules.
Also, I think Chris Gale is probably 60 by this time. But anyway.
Each batting team has 6 wickets rather than 10. Batting teams can unlock a floating third power play over by hitting 2 sixes in the initial 2-over power play. Teams will bowl 5 consecutive overs from each end rather than switching ends after each over. If teams fail to bowl their 10 overs within 45 minutes, a fielder will be removed for the final 6 balls. Fans will be able to vote for a mystery free hit via an app or website. We've spoken about fielders being removed for the last over on account of overrate violations. So here, fielder is sent out only. It's not field restrictions and all.
See, the thing is this, right? Whatever they had to do in football, they're doing in cricket, right? remove a player to avoid the penalties and all that sort of stuff. That they have to do in football, they're doing it now in cricket.
One rule I actually like, I realize, is that teams will bowl 5 consecutive overs without changing ends, right? Why do they even change ends in cricket? Does anybody know why this happens? Is it so that the audience gets enough of a decent view? Why do they change? It's so much effort.
Yeah, I mean, who cares about the audience in the ground? I mean, we've discussed this so many times.
Yeah, exactly.
Who cares?
Why did they ever come up with this rule? Was it so that the pitch gets evenly,
even wear and tear, right?
Yeah, maybe wear and tear, yeah.
Wear and tear on both sides.
Marks and stuff, yeah.
Exactly, right. But if you
umpire will fall asleep if he stands at square leg for 5 overs. So every over he has to be revived.
The entire game is, sort of fashioned around the fact that umpires need to be taken care of.
Correct.
But this is a good idea, right? You do half the overs from one end and the other half from the other end. So you save all the time.
Absolutely fine. I think that's fine. There's no problem with that.
100 does something similar, right? Which is, I think, 10 balls from one end.
First question, is it the 100 or is it the 100 undred? Or whatever.
100.
Yeah, this is a new way to name cricket, right? What test matches could become test matches, right? They are the greatest anyway. So add an S to it. Why not?
They could have called the other one, instead of T20, they could call it 120 and 100 and now 660, and then there'll be 50, and then there'll be 1-1. That's it. You just come for 1-1 and then just go away. That's it.
And if you don't come on time, there'll be no fielders for that one ball also.
But since Mithun is here, and I'm sure you played cricket growing up with Nitin, like what were the fast ones that you pulled on him? Like, I'm sure you made up some rules or something to make sure you're batting all the time.
Not really. We used to play with Sundaram bowling, as you spoke about in our apartment complex, and we had a very active that uncle who's there in every apartment complex. You stand outside and make sure that the ball did not cross knee level. If it crossed knee level, it was called violent hitting and you were declared out. That is after the batting was done. So Nitin and I grew up with a very tame view of what cricket was.
Is Sundaram bowling a little bit like Trevor Chappell?
Yeah. Put 2 brothers together, that's what you get.
Exactly.
So the 660 announcement has sparked off a bunch of conversation on Twitter. People asking what other weird rules can be shoehorned into this game. I actually think you can't get weirder than fans will be able to vote for a mystery free hit. I mean, like, what does that even mean? Like,
is it a mystery free hit or a mystery free hit? Like, like the batsman will tell you exactly where he's. Actually, that's what it should be, right? Batsman will tell you this is where I'm going to hit the ball, and then telegraph it even before he hits the stroke. Mystery free.
No violent
not
hitting.
telegraph. They use an app or a website.
It's like pool or snooker or something where you have to call the pocket, no, for the last ball.
Yeah, exactly. Red and follow. So Sidvi has tweeted, are there back runs? Is one pitch, one hand catch allowed?
Correct.
Will every batsman have a grace ball? Please answer vital questions before proceeding. To which, so Jonathan Selvaraj, who is a journalist, I believe, he replied to this tweet. You guys had baby over. When a bowler is getting hammered, the captain can declare baby over and take him off 3 balls. 3 balls. To which
you realize that all these tweets, Ash Anna has already tried in IPL. All these ideas.
all innovation already happened.
All of this, baby over, one tip, one catch. All of this was part of our cricket in that growing up with that violent uncle, because this
Exactly.
stuff would work very well there. So they are all doing the same cricket with me.
Why do you think you've been called into this episode, boss? You're the expert.
Wait, so the one tip, one catch, did someone hit that uncle and catch off a deflection of him? That's why he's so into violent hitting.
No. Whenever he gives a tip, you have to take a catch also. So,
He was by the way, worried about
you
the
had
glass windows. Mind the windows. So
that's what I was about to say. Like you guys had a very benevolent uncle. The uncles we had were the ones who kept the ball. Like if you hit it to their courtyard, then
Ball snatch.
Ball snatchers.
KLPD as a new word. Ball snatcher.
The one-to-one catch deflection actually happened in Test cricket last week, when Nichols hit the ball.
Please let us celebrate the segue, the beautiful segue from the 660 world to the Test world. It has to be celebrated. Go for it.
But also, why does this always only happen to England? I don't understand.
But worse than that, it happens to England, and within England, it only happens to Jack Leach. So Jack Leach bowls this ball.
Okay, wait, let's set this up. This is basically Henry Nichols.
You describe it.
The left-hander.
Left-hander. Jack Leach bowls
Jack
this
Leach
ball.
is bowling. He himself doesn't know why he's bowling. And he's middled it down to straight, but more towards the leg side. At which point Daryl Mitchell, who's middling everything, is backing up. And unfortunately, his bat gets in the way right off the middle and goes to mid-off, where the catch is completed. And Mohan.
And basically, the thing about this video is you see Jack Leach's expression, and he says, "How the hell did I get this wicket? I wasn't supposed to get a wicket. I was supposed to crash into the hoardings again, because there's no pitch, there's no spin in this pitch. Why did I get this wicket? How did I get this wicket?" And he pleads with the umpire, saying, "Is this out? It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious to see this." And of course, Henry Nichols can't believe his bad luck, and he just trudges off.
We had the philosophical discussion on the WhatsApp group, right? Like the batsman who should have been out was the non-striker. It should have been Daryl Mitchell who got out, because it was off his bat, or actually
Both
make
should have
it
been.
more exciting and send both of them off. This has happened before, apparently. I think Andrew Simons and Michael Clark were involved in an ODI game or something against Sri Lanka.
Oh, really?
Very similar setup, and that video was doing the rounds.
But here is a question, right? I'm not sure if this was discussed on the group, but it's worth debating again on the pod, I think. Forget about the legality of the dismissal, right? The English so-called proud, protectors of the spirit of the game and whatever else bullcrap comes with it, right? One, should they really have appealed for that? I understand everybody was stunned that this even happened. Two, should Ben Stokes really, persist in sending the batsman off? Like, is this something that... So, here's the thing, right? If this was something where the runner collided with the bowler, for example, right? Or the bowler collided with the runner, blah, 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 right? You could very well make an argument for, you need to be recalled, like call back the person who was run out or whatever, right? So why can't I make the same argument here as well, right? I don't understand.
It's a bit tough, right? Because you don't know where you stop. If it deflects off the wicket and of the stumps and goes there.
No, I understand. Which is why I'm saying don't codify it as a rule. I am purely arguing this from the perspective of the English being complete hypocrites, which is, it's one of the central tenets of my life in general anyway, right? But if you're going to go on about the spirit of the game every time Ravichandran Ashwin does something, do you not also, have to show the same spirit of cricket when you get a wicket? So, yeah.
Oh yeah,
it's a good hill to die on, that to call the English out for being hypocritical. Very, very nice hill to die on.
Absolutely, it's one of my guiding principles in life.
All of us actually on this podcast have our own hills to die on, right? For Karthik, it is England. For Tony, it is the shitness of New Zealand. For Mohan, it is obviously the abomination that is the IPL. And for me, it is the overrates.
I should also say that I'm hardly the first person to get to this hill, right? In front of me is an illustrious list of, including Mike Marquesi, who wrote the epitome of, anyone but England on this. So, there's a very proud history.
You're standing on the shoulder of giants.
Yeah, exactly. You're not standing on a hill. You're standing on the bodies of giants, which English cricket
who are on the hill already.
Yeah.
Since we spoke about fielders coming in the way of batsmen and unfortunate runouts happening, we were before the podcast wondering, what Ganguly reference are we going to pull into today's episode, given we've had wonderful episodes from the past. I'm going all the way back to the Titan Cup, which I think people of our generation, I think even Mithun probably remembers the Titan Cup, which went on for forever. And at the end of it, somehow India beat South Africa and Australia to win a tri-series. It was the only multi-nation series that Tendulkar as captain actually
Wait,
won.
is that
Anyway.
true? Oh my
Oh,
god.
as captain.
As captain.
As captain.
Oh, as captain. Okay, okay.
He didn't win much at all. He won the Sahara Cup that followed and a few things here and there, but this was the only multi-nation tournament. Anyway, the opening game of the Titan Cup, South Africa batted first, got 260 odd, and India were chasing quite badly. Sujit Somasundar famously made his debut and was... I remember, this is also goes back to we spoke about Sundaram earlier. I remember the headline or the caption in the Hindu the next day. He was bowled by Alan Donald or something, and Somasundar torn asunder was the caption in the Hindu the next day with a picture of Sujit Somasundar getting out. But
Wait,
anyway, so
what's your
after-
favorite football club growing up? Sunderland.
So Somasundar got out, Tendulkar got out cheaply, which meant the game was effectively over. And you had these two young batsmen, Dravid and Ganguly, who were batting together, trying to cobble something together, barely getting the ball off the square. This was against South Africa with Alan Donald and Macmillan and Pollock and all the good fast bowlers. There was slow 50s scored by both Dravid and Ganguly. The chase really wasn't going anywhere. Ganguly was trying to pinch a single, right? And I think the bowler was Fani de Villiers, right? He dinks the ball to the offside, takes off. Except that Fani de Villiers was probably 2.5 times bigger than Ganguly. In his follow through, comes in the way. Ganguly runs, full as fast as Ganguly runs. He runs straight into Fani de Villiers, sprawls backwards and knocked out completely. By which time the fielder at mid-off or wherever has picked up the ball, and unfortunately this heading towards a run out. But Ganguly gets up and tries to scramble to the non-striker's end. By the time he reaches the non-striker's end, Brian Macmillan has reached there to receive the throw. He trips on Macmillan and then falls down again. But right in the stumps, he falls twice, right? And it doesn't even save his wicket. He's actually run out. And he slowly starts trudging off. But Hansi Cronje, back then, who was the epitome of sportsmanship, said no, this is not fair, we will call Ganguly back, and he actually recalls him and he continues batting. Ganguly went on to score a 50. We only found out many years later that Cronje probably had placed money on Ganguly scoring a 50 in that game.
He's like, this idiot can't even do what I placed money on.
The spirit of cricket, right, has many dimensions to it, is what we were trying to say.
By the way, for listeners of the pod, since they don't have the benefit of watching the video, I want to say, while Nitin was recounting this nearly 10-minute long anecdote, Mithun was increasingly looking bewildered. He was like, we both grew up and watched the same match. I didn't know this guy was tape recording it in his head to play back.
Hilarious fellow.
No, his look was a little bit of respect for the recall, right? And complete disdain for the recall at the same time.
No.
Which recall? Hansi's recall or Nitin Sundar's?
Total recall. What really stumps Mithun, and I know he does say this sometimes, is how nature and nurture together can have such very different outcomes, right? So Mithun has absolutely no interest in cricket. He used to watch a little bit of NBA, used to play basketball reasonably well and volleyball as well, quite well in school and college days. Absolutely no interest in cricket, and then you have this other guy.
No, I was just saying, within the space of one conversation, he went from, reasonably well to pretty well on the way I play basketball and volleyball, which I noticed.
In public, I'm just being kind, yeah.
Yeah, but cricket was a traumatic sport for me because at one point, the Sundaram bowling which we played within our compound was easy because that nobody would get hurt. I went once with my school classmates and everyone. Obviously, cricket was the most popular sport, so they took me out and we were playing in the larger ground, which is near where we lived in the Gopalpuram ground, and they sent me off to field at one place near the boundary or something. And I'm actually a decently athletic fellow, and I used to play basketball, volleyball, as my brother said, pretty well, right? So I'm standing there to field, and for a long time the sun is blasting. It's Madras. I'm getting really hot. Nothing is happening. You're just sweating there. Nothing else. Then eventually one guy hits the ball my way, and the ball comes. And they're playing. This is the first time I think I was playing with the. I don't know, now there's red, white, pink, but the actual hard ball, right? Because we used to play tennis ball back then. And I remember going in to pick that up as it came, and it hit a bump and knocked me on my head. And I was like, this game is, the predictability in this game is like highly annoying. That was actually when I stopped playing, trying cricket. But I think Nitin had it easier with the tennis ball. Maybe.
So to complete that anecdote, the ball hit his head. Mithun fell down and he was a bit faint. Then some people came, sprinkled water on his face, and asked him, "Naatil evadaya?"
But just on school cricket, right? There was this inter-house match that happened in our school, and like it's a fairly big campus with like obviously like big yards and houses behind it and stuff like that. There's this, so one side is shorter than the other, I think the offside, and someone hit the ball there. There's this guy who went chasing, and there's a fence, and he falls, and like there's nothing, like you don't know what's happened, and then everyone runs together, and he actually fell into a well into the next compound. I mean, luckily he was fine, but like, yeah, I mean, it depends on your childhood memories growing up, whether it's traumatic.
Could have done with Mahendra Singh Dhoni on your team.
Yeah.
Well, of course.
Well, of course.
Oh, boy.
He was well, of course. Continuing the trend on weird dismissals, another thing happened in TNPL this week, which you can't call monketing anymore, but it's basically running out the non-striker as he backs up too much. Surely there needs to be a better way to describe this, right? Maybe a shorter way to do this. But basically Baba Abarachit did it to N. Jagadishan, who walked away showing the middle finger multiple times and had to apologize. While the commentator is trying to appeal to the audience, as Srinath said, trying to tell them why it is fair to do this. And she says, it is war. This is war, so it is okay to run him out, although it may not look all that good. But anyway.
No, I think Jagdishan or whoever the batsman was just trying to say that he was out, and he agreed with the umpire.
So raising the finger, yeah. The dreaded figure. But I'm the question is, will we see more of this in international cricket? Just
the middle finger. That depends on what Virat Kohli's age is. I mean,
Virat Kohli
he stopped showing
did it,
he stopped flipping the bird these days.
It's legal, but we do need a name for it. And I just say bowler run out or something.
I'm sure Ashwin will gladly give his name to it, right? He'll say,
Ashwin.
Ashwin.
Don't call
he would gladly give his own name. Don't call it Mankat, right? You used to use that name in a derogatory sense. We will make a fresh start. This is part of the rules, and you shall be Ashwin.
Ashwin, exactly. And meanwhile, the Ranji is coming to an interesting close. I think whether Mumbai will be able to do something on the last day, we don't know at the moment. Mumbai is in a bid to get some fast runs. Is going to get out with just about 100 runs lead or something like that, and Madhya Pradesh might actually win outright. It's not the kind of final that Madhya Pradesh and Karnataka played out. Probably in the same ground several years ago, in which in the last day, I think Vijay Bharadwaj got 6 wickets and somehow miraculously got a win for Karnataka out of almost nothing. They needed more runs, I think, Mumbai to make that happen, but I don't think we're going to see.
No, but it's anyway a first inning shootout, right?
It is, but unless Madhya Pradesh gets bowled out in the second innings.
Yeah, exactly. So Mumbai are going to try and set whatever they can. Like they have
give
one
them 60 overs of hell.
Maybe, but let's go back to the other game, right? When Karnataka Madhya Pradesh played 10 20 years ago, Karnataka got 300 runs. I think there was a lead to Madhya Pradesh of 120 runs or something like that. It's 75 run lead, and Karnataka got 320 in the second innings, very very quick runs, and then got Madhya Pradesh all out for 150. So
Ranji final, Mumbai on the 5th day, whatever the target is, I would say the opponents have to be very careful. Mumbai just make things happen in Ranji.
Why are you gavaskaring this? There's no way Mumbai is winning this. I'm calling it. Madhya Pradesh wins next pod. You can troll me if it doesn't happen.
They should, but yeah.
Which is fantastic. If you look at the coach for Madhya Pradesh, and that is Chandrakant Pandit. His record is quite amazing. 2 wins for Mumbai on the trot, and then he goes across to Vidarbha and 2 wins for Vidarbha, and then he goes across now to MP, and then first year, another win for MP.
on that topic, there was a very nice article about Chandrakant Pandit that came out in the Indian Express, I think, last week. I don't know if any of you read it. The crux of the article essentially was the turnaround that he brought to Vidarbha, and then now he's come to MP and stuff. And it was mostly about his, I guess, for cricket, very unorthodox way of coaching, which is, in a nutshell, basically what the article was outlining is Chandrakant Pandit's style of coaching is basically very sort of top down. So he makes plans and he expects his players to execute those plans to the T. So he doesn't want players to be thinking on their feet on the ground. He doesn't want them to be improvising. He puts a lot of thought and preparation apparently into the entire season. And, he makes game plans for specific opponents and specific players within, the opponent's camps and all of that. And each player in the team apparently has a specific role. And of course, that's the sort of fun side of it. The not so fun side of it is apparently as a player, if you deviate from that, then he gets sort of very upset about it. But obviously, the results speak for themselves. And I think part of the article was talking about how, this is obviously it works well for teams with, not so much experience, teams with younger players and so on. But then it's also limiting in a sense because after a point, as a player, you don't really grow if you're just executing whatever your coach is telling you to do. But anyway, just to wrap up, the thing that it got me thinking about also was the difference between even within team sports. If you take the difference between something like cricket and say something like football, whether you take soccer or American football or whatever, right? In American football, NFL, for example, the coach is all powerful. Like the coach is the only strategic thinker on the team, right? You don't expect the players to really be thinking on their feet. Yes, they do brilliant things athletically, right? They pull off great catches, they run, pull off great runs and all of those things. But everything is basically already planned out. And if you deviate from the strategy, then you're letting down the other 10 people and the coach, right? Whereas cricket, when we think about it, it's not really like that. Cricket is a much more independent game, even though it is a team game, right? The bowler has a lot of leeway, even though the captain maybe gives them some instructions. Batsmen almost always have complete leeway. There are still dressing room instructions once in a while and all of that, right? But anyway.
Get the ball, Ash.
Get the ball, Ash. That's right.
Yeah, but to that point, right, like cricket is different from all other sports because it's basically just a collection of discrete events, right? Every ball is an independent event, basically, as opposed to like the previous action affecting the rest of the gameplay. So
unless you don't finish your penultimate over in time, in which case what follows is in fact your fielders are sent off. I'm just happy we finally have an ex-cricketer who lives up to the name of being a pundit.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, Gavaskar and Manjrekar and all these guys are like, hard and soft hands.
So speaking of this punditry, right, actually to the previous Henry Nichols catch, Sidvi had a great tweet saying Gavaskar had warned you non-strikers long back to be sort of not backing up irresponsibly.
Ground your bat.
Know which hand you need to hold the bat in and tuck your shirt in as well while you're at it.
But just to round off the Ranji stuff, right? The MP team, apart from Yash Dubey, who's kind of famous, you have Rajat Patidar, who's recently become famous. The rest of them, you just don't know. They're not names that you recognize. And somehow Chandrakant Pandit has sort of bandied them together and made a good team out of that. I just read out the names: Himanshu Mantri, Shubham Sharma, Aditya Srivastava as the captain. We don't really know. These are not regular names that you see on an IPL sheet, which is great. Akansh Raghuvamshi, Parth Sahani, Saransh Jain, Anubhav Agarwal, Kumar Kartikeya, Gaurav Yadav. None of those names are, well known. Rajat Patidar, now we know. And every time he walks into the Chinnaswamy ground, they're all going RCB, RCB.
Wait. Let's get this clear. That crowd goes RCB every time. It just so happened that Rajat Patidar happened to be there.
Doesn't matter who is doing what on the
ground. A stopped clock is also right twice a day times. It's nothing to do with it.
They somehow get it right once.
I was at the ground last week for the 5th T20, which unfortunately got rained out 3.5 overs in, and beyond a point it was raining and the crowd didn't know what to do. RCB. What else will they do?
I'm 100% certain on Monday mornings when people are stuck in traffic around the ring, they're also sitting in their cars, they're chanting
Silk Board Junction.
RCB.
Tony has called it that this match is not going to be Gavaskar.
Was it in Ranji that Sunil Gavaskar did the left-hand batting thing? He batted
did.
left-hander.
That's when Raghuram Bhatt was bowling, and he was bowling into the rough for the right-hander. It was absolutely creating havoc, and Gavaskar decided not to allow Karnataka win outright, and batted left-handed, and then stonewalled completely on the last day. I mean, people will say that was that in the spirit of the game. I don't know, but he did it, and he had a doggedness about his cricket. I think till he grabbed the mic, he was actually quite enjoyable.
He was a fine gentleman.
And then he got hold of the mic.
This is what people say about this.
People say about us.
No, on that one. So I did. So as I was listening to all of, and I've given this is a podcast which Nitin was doing, and I'm a fan of several of you here. I've had a chance to listen to all. Otherwise, I wouldn't listen to a cricket podcast, right? So,
so you are the one listener. Okay, I see. Thank you.
Hey, all of Nitin's family listens, yeah. So, we've got 7 in the family who all listen. All of the Elapuli town around the State Bank of India are all tuning in every Monday morning. What do you think they do over there? But no, point is this, when I saw Mohan going so deep into that discussion on what is happening, it just completely blows my mind that all of you have this much of knowledge about this thing. And that there are other people listening to this is something which is so totally remote from my world or world.
We have to edit out Mohan's insights every time to create the artificial aura of.
Because there was a lot of depth in it.
Mithun, politely, what he's saying is, how the hell do you have so much time to waste?
No, and more importantly, how the hell do other people have so much time to waste listening to this?
And then there was also a slightly, the other thing which also struck me is a slight mild self-hubris answer which said, cricket is unlike all other sport where everyone is a discrete event.
We'll tell you.
By the way,
we'll
all
tell you
four
about
of you
it.
gave each other virtual high fives on that line also. I was like, hey, come on now. Every sport is a sport. Suddenly everything else is a continuum and cricket is high discrete event sport.
I was actually going to round that up with the actual pioneer coach in cricket is Ravi Shastri, who basically proved that coach doesn't matter, right? He's like, Baad mein jaye coach. So it was self-deprecating of cricket only.
Appropriate hashtag should be put there, Miss You Shastri.
Miss you,
Shastri. Yeah. But also, Mithun, it's very gratifying to hear that your entire family listens to our podcast.
I locked them up in a room and blasted into their ears.
Other companies like Facebook and all have click farms and botnets. We have listening audience farms.
This is not a joke. We also run this podcast on YouTube. I don't know why, for some reason. And one day I got a notification saying we have a comment on it. I'm like, oh my God, we have a comment. And I go there and it is, I forget the first name, but it is blank Sundar. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like that.
I think we should stop recruiting Sundars into the podcast. We wouldn't have any listeners, that's all. So please.
Coming soon to your podcast, Washington Sundar.
Yeah. Sorry. Washington Irving. Irving Washington. What is it?
Major.
Moving on from cricket that has no value in the ICC Super League to ODIs that have no value in the ICC Super League. What is the ICC Super League at this point? I don't know.
Yeah, what is actually, I want to know, what is the ICC Super League?
ICC Super League is the ODI sort of running thing from 2020 to 2023, which will determine who is playing the World Cup next year. India are obviously through because they are the hosts. They will pick the top 8 teams from here and also another 2 teams through some other snake and ladder or something like that.
Audience voting using an app or website.
And each team is supposed to have, I think, 8 tournaments, 4 at home and 4 away or something. But the recently concluded Australia-Sri Lanka series is not part of the Super League, but it is ODIs anyway, which was actually a surprisingly kick-ass tournament in terms of the quality of the cricket, the results, the crowd, everything.
Wait, so one clarification I wanted to ask. Each team is supposed to have 4 series at home and away against Sri Lanka or against everybody?
Actually, Sri Lanka is playing Sri Lanka home and away if their sort of domestic situation is anything to go by. But anyway,
So I'm going to indulge myself by reading a few paras from Andrew Fernando's article after Sri Lanka won the series, right? And obviously it's a very personal space, right? Sri Lanka has been going through a very tough time as a country, as a cricket team, obviously as well. Yeah, these are some of the things that he wrote, right? What is the future even? This is a nation run by a government essentially living hand to mouth. They are awaiting the next fuel shipments at the end of the week, desperately scrambling for money to pay for them. Meanwhile, fuel queues choke the road like metal pythons, getting longer and fatter by the day. Trains and buses are crammed ever more with commuters who have no choice but to cling for life on the brimming footboards. The vegetable stalls and grocery shelves, though, are empty. In normal times, you will ask, what things will be like down the line? Will this batter develop into the next guy to get 10,000 runs? Oh, and that bowler has something about him, no? 5 years' time. Just watch. He'll have won so much games by then. He'll have such an aura. What about us, though? Where will we be in 5 years' time? Still struggling? In queues? Skint? Abroad after giving up on the country we love? In daily fits of rage at the news coming out of the parliament? Stop. Save yourself the spiral. It's not worth thinking about. For one night, you tune it out.
It's quite an amazing article.
It obviously celebrated the fact that Sri Lanka somehow managed to win 3 games on the trot, right? Against, and the series was a proper throwback, right? Like I think on one of the games they bowled like 42, 43 overs of spin, which is Sri Lanka of yore, right? It's like Dharmasena, Jayasurya, Muralitharan, and De Silva as your bowling attack pretty much. You had that guy, what's his name? Percy. Percy is still around,
Uncle
right?
Percy.
Uncle Percy is still around. The Papare was, blaring out in full form, and the ground was full. People were just having a good time, right? And amazing, right? Amazing, yeah.
No, the last over, I think you should describe the action as it were. Like Australia were 9 down and needed some 19 or something.
Yeah, and what is the name of the batsman who was going? Kuhneman, right?
Daniel Kahneman. You made some thinking fast and slow.
He was batting slow and fast. Yeah. No, yeah, they need a lot of runs, and it came down to what, a boundary of the last ball, is it, or 5 of the last ball, and he couldn't. Yeah, Sri Lanka were winning the game easy, and then Kuhneman came out of nowhere and took it deep up to the last ball. So it was a very close finish as well. At Ketarama on a Tuesday night, a team packed full of spinners turned derailed an opposition chase. There were close catchers in past the 40th over. Mid-pitch conferences on strategy as things got tight. A glimpse of a normal time. Even Lasith Malinga, who has raised as many roars at this stadium as anyone, was in attendance in his role as Sri Lanka's bowling consultant. In that nerve-wracking final over that Sri Lanka should have had no trouble getting through, he was fuming outside the square leg boundary, like he wanted to beat up the universe for its failure to arrange for him to be the guy bowling to close out the game. An angry Malinga is, in its own way, a marker of normal Sri Lankan life too. They won off the last ball, and Ketarama exploded. The last few moments in this parallel universe, one in which, thank God, finally there might be a future.
Good.
Very nice.
So I caught up with Andrew a few months back. We used to work together at Cricket for
And you forced him to listen to this podcast.
I forced him.
Where he's got the inspiration from to churn out these lines.
on that note, we should get Andrew on the podcast. Fast food. But yeah, and when he was here, we caught up for drinks, and we were very seriously discussing this tour, Australia touring Sri Lanka, and he actually told me, just come for the Gaul test. It's going to be great fun and all of that. This is just as things were beginning to go, southwards in Sri Lanka, right? And I was actually planning to go to watch the Gaul test this year, which is going to happen. Obviously not planning to go now.
If you come from that context, you probably feel a lot of pain for what the country is going through. And then in the midst of all of this, there's a cricket match going on. Well, that's not the only cricket match, by the way. If you want to use this to segue into Indian women playing there. There's a T20 tournament happening over there at the same time. I think India has won both the matches so far. The first one, I think India won quite comfortably. The second one was a bit more close, 125. I think India made of the 19.2 overs. This is a T20 tournament, obviously. Harmanpreet Kaur did well.
Jemima Rodriguez is back in the Indian team.
Is she back? Yep. She's back. So there's stuff happening in Sri Lanka, and I can see.
I frankly don't know how they're putting all of this together, right? Like, because
who knows?
They literally don't have stuff. They don't have food. They don't have fuel. I don't know how they're running cricket. They normally itself are struggling to put cricket together in Sri Lanka. I don't know how they're doing it.
Except for the time during the lockdown when there was a Sri Lanka T20 League organized in Punjab, if you remember. Never forget.
Yes. But I think maybe at the expense of, this is definitely sort of romanticizing it or whatever, but this is not new for Sri Lanka, right? Like if you consider their biggest moment in cricket arguably was also at a time when the country was in complete shambles, chaos with the whole civil war going on.
True.
And I don't think, yes, these are real challenges this time, what is happening and so on, but it's not like Sri Lanka has seen an easier time of it in the past either, right? And in some sense, cricket has always been even Andrew's article that you're quoting, right? What he harkens back to as a normal time is that time, the 95, 96.
That's right.
Like when Sri Lanka exploded on the scene as an ODI superpower, right? They won the World Cup. And then that magical period between 95 and 98 when basically they were unbeatable, in ODIs. That was still a time when nothing was normal.
Those were the toughest times. Those were the toughest times.
There was nothing normal. People were getting blown up, buildings were getting blown up, all kinds of stuff was happening.
Yeah, and teams were refusing to tour and all of that, right?
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. But
well, even in the World Cup, Australia refused to play World Cup matches.
Australia and West Indies.
And West Indies.
Again, going back to Mike Marquis's golden book, as always, right? There's an entire chapter devoted to Australia and West Indies pulling out and the whole repercussions of that, and then the friendship game, the efforts of the subcontinental boards, which at that time were actually very close, and they actually
PIL.
wanted. Yes, Pilcom.
Yeah. And you had.
By the way, guys, Mithun once again has this look. Did you guys go to college at all? Did you guys go to work at all?
No, man, this is depth. Suddenly now you guys went from hubris to emotional. So, and then we're having and then we're going there's a cross reference geopolitical situations back in the day, Civil War, today this thing, and how cricket is the only thing which is holding everything up. I was both amused, astounded, and completely taken aback. Well played, guys.
Stupefied, petrified.
Yeah, but I think there's another sort of companion piece from Bharat Sundareshan as well, right? So he basically went around the stadium.
One more Sundar on the podcast.
Yeah, the article is titled Sri Lanka strives to hold on to its smile, right? And basically it ends with, as one of the organizers of the human chain put it, we are perhaps the luckiest nation in this part of the world, and we've withstood more tragedy than most other countries without losing our smile. And now is not the time to lose it either. So, yeah, it's very, very sort of weird, surreal scenes, but also very, very happy for Sri Lanka if they can turn it around, right? Because that's one country which I'd love to go back to time and again. Hopefully things change. But also on the Mike Marquis note, right? Big kudos to the Australia change, right? How the Australian teams of the past and now have been.
Absolutely.
Because Pat Cummins put an Insta post the night before the fifth match, where they were basically sitting in darkness saying, waiting for the power in the town to be turned on so we can start our dinner. But, Sri Lanka has been spectacular and stuff like that. So kudos also to Australia.
Absolutely right. And going back few months to one of our earlier episodes, we spoke about Manas Labuschagne in Pakistan eating dal and roti for the 23rd time. So,
Pilcom is back at it.
And full credit to Australia, right? They were really the first big team to tour Pakistan after I don't know how many years. And now floodgates have sort of opened, right? West Indies have toured and there are more tours in the offing. And then to go to Sri Lanka in this time, can't be easy. Definitely can't be easy to put a team together and play in these conditions. Good job, Pat Cummins and team. Yeah.
And at the end of the fifth match, obviously everyone erupted into "Thank you, Australia" chants in the Sri Lankan stadium as well. So great scenes all around.
Followed by RCB.
Everyone remove their Sri Lanka jersey and inside it's, Virat 18.
Yeah, I think quickly we should end with the match that broke ESPN cricket.
Yeah, exactly. No, we started the podcast talking about one Jadeja and how he created a blip, and now we'll talk about another Jadeja who came into bat for the second time in the same innings. And Cricinfo, Cricbuzz, every single website did not know what to do, right? So context for our listeners, this is the warm-up game between India and Leicestershire ahead of the one-off fifth test that's going to happen in a few days. Practice game is turned from being a proper practice game of some with some sort of order to it into an open net session, basically. You already had a bunch of Indian players playing for Leicestershire because they wanted to get more people practice. So you had Rishabh Pant batting for Leicestershire. And then on day 3, Jadeja first got out for a duck, I think, and then came back again to bat later because he wanted Gaji. And Cricinfo, Crickbus had no idea what to do with this. The software is not programmed to handle these kinds of complications. I think commentary and whatever scoring just stopped for a while, and my friends from Cricinfo did clarify there was utter chaos on the scoring room, and then you had Pujara batted for both teams, basically.
Both
batted
teams.
for India.
So wait,
as well
have
as
they
for
changed the rules like this now? Like people can come back, or
it's a warm-up game
where violent hitting is allowed.
what you guys discussed about the six seti or whatever that thing was called, right? Like earlier, I mean, like, you can't keep track of what they're changing half the time.
you
exactly
think
right.
we know?
Nobody,
I-
even the
umpires
umpires
also
don't know. It's okay.
Yeah. When you say mystery free hit and extra power play, first you're like, okay, how many power play overs are actually there in this format right now? Nobody knows. One day cricket power plays, nobody knows. Everything is a power play now.
Everything is a mystery.
Everything is a mystery. This whole Leicestershire game is one full party. Huh? The entire Indian diaspora has shown up, like dressed up in ethnic finery. There is a Bhangra happening and some Guju dancing is happening on the sides. And
They're also RCB.
Yeah.
But
I think
but Pujara
new
played for both teams, and Jadeja played twice, and the scorecard couldn't keep up. So even now the scorecard says the first time Jadeja actually got out for a duck, but if you look at the scorecard, it says 56-56. Both Jadeja scored 56.
ESPN Cricinfo has basically Jack Leached its way into the boundary hoardings. But new friend of the pod, El Chopernos, tweeted, Pujara has made every kid's dream come true for himself by batting for both teams and not bowling for either. So
Unfortunately, if it was violent cricket, he wouldn't need to field also, but he fielded.
Violent cricket. No, trust these Rajkot plus Saurashtra batsmen to come and, take all this gaji, because that's
Take
what
all
they've been
gajis.
grooved to do in the Rajkot pitch over the years. For Jadeja and Pujara being at the forefront of this is no surprise.
So, guys, I mean, who do you think is going to captain India in the test, in the one-off test?
basically Rohit Sharma's tested COVID positive now, and I think the latest one has to be Bumrah, because KL Rahul's not there either. And I think Bumrah is anyway the vice captain for Test or something.
Yes.
right?
Bumrah is the vice captain, but I wouldn't be surprised if if Pant or Kohli get a game.
I think it's coming, guys.
No.
Kohli is going to come back
Kohli's
for
come
one
back.
test,
What?
for one final hurrah, for one final hurrah. But yeah, no, it's also funny. At the same time as Rohit was testing positive, and bunch of people going down with COVID, you had Rishabh Pant happily signing autographs, taking very closely composed selfies with kids on the boundary line, all of that. This really reminds me of last year when India went to England and nobody knew what the COVID protocol was. Like, book signings were happening, people were falling ill, and the tour got curtailed. I wonder what's going to happen this time.
So it's likely that Rohit might come back and recover and captain, but I don't think so.
Even when he's fully fit, he doesn't play all the matches.
No, the new COVID protocols might just be wear a N95 mask and you can play. That's all. If your fever has gone down, pop on Dolo, YOLO.
Dolo and YOLO.
Gill is definitely the problem is you don't know who else is going to contract.
Gill won't contract because COVID affects the lungs, so Gill will play.
Oh my God! Wow. I think that's a great note to end this pod.
After this, we have to go.
Mic drop moment. That about rounds it up. Seriously, no coming back from that. But thanks everyone for tuning in yet again, and thank you to the Sundar family, of whom we'll take Mithun Sundar as the representative for keeping the listenership going.
Thank you to the Sundar family for both being the speakers on the podcast and the listeners on the podcast.
and the editors also.
And the editors. All rounders.
All right, Mithun, come over. I'll teach you editing next. Today's episode.
Skip on that one. YOLO and Dolo. I'm dying.
This podcast brought to you for, by, and only listened to by the Sundar family.
Of the Sundars, by the Sundars, and for the Sundars.
Tagline: Soma Sundar, tone asunder. Not to be forgotten.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Listen, share, subscribe, and come on the podcast very soon.
But only if your name is Sundar.
Thanks again. Bye. Say bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
guys.
bye.